listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for letting us spend some time with you. I am being carefully monitored and supervised.
Yes, you are. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Or at least she's trying to.
I'm trying.
At least you didn't say, I'm very trying. You said that before, though. If you like the things you hear today, you can go to, those little share buttons, like buttons, and those kind of things, and push on them, and it helps everybody find us easier, just like you did. I will give you a little bit of warning there today. Some of the things you hear, I'm hoping, send you scrambling for a Bible to say, could that really be? So we'll see. If you haven't been to GiveGod90.com lately, check that out. Author Jerry Mitchell's Where the Books Are Sold. The other day we were talking about Passover. And when we look at the spring feasts, a lot of people think of Passover and they consider it to be the name of the entire week, right? But Passover actually only lasts as long as the meal does. When Passover ends, the Feast of Unleavened Bread begins. But, what is it, and why pay any attention to it? Why observe it? Well, to answer that question, we really need to go back to the original language and look at a definition. One of the most overlooked words is, if you look in Strong's, it's going to be Strong's number Hebrew 4744, and you'll see that it's mikra. And it's defined as something that's called out, a public meeting, and a rehearsal. Wait a minute, rehearsal? These feasts are rehearsals? Yes, because the writer of Hebrews says they are an unclear picture or a shadow of good things to come. If you look in Leviticus 23:2, it says, "Speak to the Israelites, say to them, these are my appointed feasts, the feasts of the Lord, that you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies." Now, the word assemblies used in this translation, it fits the definition, right? Because it's a public meeting. But these are actually rehearsals. We're practicing for something. Now, a lot of Christians, they're taught that the Feast of Unleavened Bread remembers the time that the mixed multitude was traveling out of Egypt, because it happens right after the Passover meal. Okay, that kind of makes sense today, but what about then, right? The question should occur to people who are much smarter than me, right? If these feasts are rehearsals that, we get together and we observe, then why did the mixed multitude who just came out of Egypt, or who was coming out of Egypt, why do they need to observe them year after year? They're the ones who were living through it, right? If they're the ones who had just lived through it, why do they want to remember it year after year after year? Why do they want to keep remembering it? These feasts, they were given through Moses very early at the time they were at Mount Sinai, right? The journey out of Egypt, it's still being talked about. And many people said, you brought us out here to die. I want to go back. So they're living through this. Why do they want to be constantly reminded? What are they rehearsing for? What are they practicing? A rehearsal, if you think about a play, or maybe, a choir singing a song, or maybe you're singing a song, you do it over and over until it gets to the point where you know it inside out, upside down, and backwards, right? Well, if we put this into a little bit of modern perspective, times we live in, it would be kind of like taking someone who has never been outside of the city. You're going to put them in a very unpopulated environment, and you're going to tell them, by the way, you need to survive. They're going to want to go back. They're not going to want to remember this. It's going to be traumatic, right? That person probably would want to forget about the entire event. They just want life to go back to normal. And that's what the people were saying. You brought us out here. We're going to die. We just want to go back to what we knew. It wasn't great, but we could survive. We knew how to survive that. It's kind of like somebody in the city. They know how to survive in the city. They don't know how to survive in the forest. The people who were living through it, they had no need, no reason to repeat their personal experience. So there must be more to this Feast of Unleavened Bread than simply as a way to remember that journey out of Egypt. Now, regular listeners know, and I jokingly refer to the Feast of Unleavened Bread as the Feast of Crumbs. And if you've ever tried to eat matzah without making a mess, it's almost impossible. There will be crumbs, and a lot of them, especially if it's me eating them. We eat it all year round, and yeah, it's messy.
It's crummy.
So let's look at a few passages and see if there are some clues that reveal what we might be rehearsing. Because if we rehearse it, we should be able to recognize it when the real event happens, right? So if you want to go ahead and read those first few passages.
You must celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Do this because on the very day I brought your division of people out of Egypt. So all of your descendants must celebrate this day. This is a law that will last from now on. You are to eat bread made without yeast. Start this on the evening of the 14th day of the first month of your year. Eat this until the evening of the 21st day. Exodus chapter 12, verses 17 and 18. So for 7 days you must not eat any bread made with yeast. There must be no bread made with yeast anywhere in your land. Exodus chapter 13, verse 7. Do not eat it with bread made of yeast. But for 7 days eat bread without yeast. This is the bread of suffering, because you left Egypt in a hurry. So all your life you will remember the time you left Egypt. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 3. Eat bread made without yeast for 6 days. On the 7th day, have a special meeting for the Lord your God. Do not work that day. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 8.
If you're paying attention, you may be going, wait a minute. Did Moses make a mistake? In verse 3, it's 7 days. In verse 8, it's 6 days. What's going on here? Well, it's not a mistake. It's kind of a clarification. On the first day, you put the leaven out of your house. And, today we say that's preparing for Passover. And then you eat nothing with a rising agent in it like yeast for the next 6 days. It's clarifying. It's not an error. It's not a scribal controversy. It's simply a clarification. And it should be sufficient, but you know how people are, right? Oh, for 7 days, that means from this day to this day to this day. No, it's telling you, it's clarifying. You take it out, and then for the next 6 days, you don't eat anything with yeast in it. So it's just a clarification. If you pay careful attention to the way the Hebrew language is written, it makes sense because it is just a style of Hebraic writing. So that really didn't give us a whole lot of answers there about what we might be looking for. So is there some other event in the Bible that happens in the spring of the year that is a week long in duration. Well, yeah, there just so happens to be happened a few years later. So if you want to read that next part.
The Jews who returned from captivity celebrated the Passover. This was on the 14th day of the first month. The priests and the Levites had made themselves clean. The Levites killed the Passover lambs for all the Jews who had returned from captivity. They also did it for their relatives, priests, and for themselves. So all the people of Israel who returned from captivity ate the Passover lamb. So did those who had given up their unclean ways of their non-Jewish neighbors. They worshiped the Lord, the God of Israel. For 7 days they celebrated the Feast of Unleavened Bread with a very joyful way. The Lord had made them happy by changing the mind of the king of Assyria. So the king had helped them in the work on the temple of the God of Israel. Ezra chapter 6, verses 19 and 22.
Okay, so this, of course, is the completion of the Second Temple. And what we see is that observing the Feast of Unleavened Bread should be a joyous celebration. But is there anything in the Bible that tells us about an event that lasts for 6 days, and on the seventh day there will be a gathering of the people who choose the Creator as their God? Because what the Ezra portion Mara just read, it's still talking about unleavened bread, right? So that's not a lot of assistance in finding out, why are we doing this? What are we rehearsing for? Now I could go back to Genesis and 6 days of creation, and of course the seventh day is a day of rest, but that's not something we might need to be rehearsing for. It's something that's already been finished. A rehearsal, it's what you're planning to do in the future, right? Now, I'm speculating a little bit here, but one possibility could be, the current 6,000-year millennia we're in, we're looking at the 6 days of creation. We're coming up on the 6,000-year line. And then when you get to the 7,000 years, the millennial reign, well, I'm using that, a day is as 1,000 years kind of a thing here. But the reality is, that's not something that we need to rehearse once a year. We should be living that way every day. We should be getting ready for that every day. Now, there is something I've not read anywhere. I haven't heard anybody say this other than me, and I could be wrong. I don't know. We'll see. But here's where you're going to want to run and grab a Bible. There is a possibility. Yeah, possibility. I'm not going to say probability. There is a possibility that there is a correlation between the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the first 6 trumpets you read about in Revelation. Now, Revelation 8:7 reads, the first angel sounded his trumpet, and hail and fire mixed with blood were hurled down upon the earth. A third of the earth was burned up, along with a third of the trees and the green grass. Now, don't get excited here, because this cross references to Ezekiel 38:22. I will execute judgment upon him with a plague and bloodshed. I will pour out torrents of rain, hailstones, fire, and sulfur on him, and on his troops, and on the many nations with him. So, what do we see? If the Feast of Unleavened Bread is a time you're doing without, think about this. During this time, when these trumpets are sounding, a lot of people are going to be doing without a lot of things, right? It's not going to be pleasant. The next verse of Revelation, the second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea turned to blood. Okay, if you cross-reference that to Jeremiah 51:25, behold, I am against you, O destroying mountain. You who devastate the whole earth, declares the Lord. I will stretch out my hand against you. I will roll you over the cliffs and turn you into a charred mountain. In many Bibles, this section that I take this from is considered the punishment of Babylon. Okay? So if you think about what's going on with these trumpets sounding and what's happening, it is a period of time, and I know that a lot of people think Revelation deals specifically and strictly with the fall feasts, but there's nothing in there that indicates that about this. And I'm speculating a little bit here. A lot of people have heard me say I can talk about Revelation without ever opening the book of Revelation, because everything that's in Revelation is somewhere in the Old Testament prophets when you know what you're looking for. Okay? All of the trumpets describe this outpouring of calamity as the Creator prepares the world for what's coming. And it is possible that these calamities happen in the spring of the year. It's a possibility. So are we rehearsing, getting ready to live without something we're used to, something that's comfortable, something that a lot of us, let's be honest with each other here. A lot of us have come to depend on, like leavened bread. What about the seventh day? Well, many Christians should be able to recognize that when the seventh trumpet sounds, that's when a gathering will take place. A few days of doing without, a few days of eating unleavened bread, eating something that leaves crumbs, gets messy, kind of like our Creator, making a mess of the world we live in, right? It disrupts what's normal. It confuses the status quo. It takes us away and out of our comfort zone. It does something to our psyche. It says, wait a minute, this isn't normal. We have to be ready for this. We have to be ready to do without. You have to be ready to, live through this period of time. And here's where I'm going to get in trouble with some folks. I know. It's okay. Bear with me. You're going to have to get ready to live through something difficult, like a tribulation that we need to be involved in. Believers need to be involved because we are the ones, we can't depend on somebody else. We are the ones who need to be there to help the people around us who aren't prepared. They don't know what's going on. They're going to be running around confused. They're going to desperately need the help you should be prepared to offer. Right? Now, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, and it's okay. It's in my notes. So, the people here trying to keep me straight will know. Modern Christians have shifted. Okay? They have shifted away from what used to be the golden rule. Love thy neighbor, help thy neighbor, that kind of thing. And it hasn't been that terribly long ago that this shift took place. The idea of being someone who follows the Creator's instructions so they can benefit others, the people around them, right? That has shifted. And I think it shifted when the first preacher said, well, don't you want to go to heaven when you die? Because that question shifts the focus from using our talents, our skills to benefit the people around us, and it puts that focus on us. It changes the pattern. No longer is it love thy neighbor as thyself. It's, don't you want to go? Don't you want to be the one there? You see how that shift happens. It's not about helping each other. It's about helping self, right? All of the instructions that our Creator gives us tell us to use our talents and our skills to benefit the people around us. But the shift from benefiting others to benefiting self is, well, it's kind of the battle cry of modern Christians, isn't it? At least most of the ones I know. You know, some of them, you know, they have this puffed up, arrogant attitude, and they come across like, well, I'm going to heaven and I want you to go too. Well, wait a minute. It's great that you want to go there, but think about the way you're presenting it. Right? Are you really wanting to be that arrogant? You know, others, you know, they're a little more relaxed, they're a little more laid back, but their approach is still kind of like, well, I'm saved. I think you should be too. Okay. What did you do? How do you know? Are you sure you're saved? By the way, if you are saved now, who saves you later when you need it? There's a question that you probably haven't thought of before. You know, and we can argue all the churchy sayings like once saved, always saved. And we know that's not true for a lot of reasons. Yeah, I can take you back to Ezekiel 18 for that one, but I won't. I don't want to take that much time. This arrogant attitude's not what the Bible presents. The Bible says just live the way that your Creator designed you to live so that the people around you see something in you, and they might not recognize it, they might not know what it is, but they know they need it in their lives. And quite honestly, arrogance should not be part of what they see. Okay? Now back to Unleavened Bread. Now that I've gone off on my little tangent and criticized some of the folks that we know. If the Feast of Unleavened Bread actually does correspond with the events closer to the end of the age, and quite honestly, I'm kind of leaning that way, then there is a very good reason for observing this feast. And we observe it, we rehearse it so we know what we're looking for. We're familiar with it. So when that time comes when you're doing without, you go, ooh, I know what to do here. We celebrate it with joy because our Creator is getting ready to do something big. And in just a little while, He's going to really do something big, right? He's going to destroy heaven and earth and make it all over again. Now, exactly what that's going to look like, I have no clue. And how these events actually happen isn't written in stone. We know they're going to happen. We just don't know exactly how they're going to happen. That's why we need to be familiar with them. Now, if they were written in stone, we wouldn't have the freedom of choice that we have, right? Because right now, with the freedom of choice we have, if the Almighty says, hey, you, I need you to do this, you have the freedom to say, not me. I'm not doing that. But if it was actually written in stone and we knew exactly how these things were going to play out, you wouldn't have that choice. And the way you do it or would have done it might be different than the way somebody else who's willing to do it does do it. So we don't know exactly how it plays out. We simply know that it will, because it is part of his promise and he keeps his promises. And we need to be familiar enough with these unclear pictures, these shadow pictures, these shadows of good things to come, so that we don't miss our opportunity to take part in them the best way we can. And that is going to be slightly different for everyone, right? Like it or not, we will be part of these events in some way. We will be part of these events in some way. You have to pick a side. Hopefully you're going to choose wisely and pick the side of good and not evil. I hope. If you're listening to me, you've got a good chance of doing that. But on the other hand, you have the opportunity to say, nope, I don't want any part of this. Not doing it. Can't make me. And he won't. He will let you choose your own destiny, your own eternity. Just be very, very careful where you want to spend it, right? So if what I have said hopefully intrigues you, don't be afraid to go pick up a Bible and start reading. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know about this. I need to check this one out. Dig in, study, look at all the clues. Don't be afraid to use your cross-references, but I will be honest with you, most cross-references aren't that great. You're going to have to do some word searches too. Just get in there and dig. See if I'm on the right track. Currently, I think I am. I could be wrong, but I think I am. But you choose for yourself, because this event is going to happen at some point in the future, our future. And we need to be ready for it. We also need to be ready for Monday. So until Monday.
Until Monday.
We do wish you many, many blessings, everyone.
Yes, we do.